Hello. Welcome everyone to the Westfield Athenaeum. If it's your first time, hi. My name is Shayna. I am the outreach librarian for the Westfield Athenaeum. So I coordinate all the adult programs. So I helped Dan set up this wonderful event today. Most of you should have gotten your summer reading brochure. If you have not, there's some on the bench there by the exit. While I have you, we do have summer reading starting this month, and we have lots of fun events for all ages, so check our calendar. All of the events in this brochure are for adults, so make sure to check them out, and if you want to attend, register. And as well, we have some information on our bean stack, which is how you track your minutes for summer reading. If you do want to win the prizes that are listed here, including our grand prize of a Switch light, you will need to track your minutes in the bean stack app. So that is all I will say for summer reading. We hope to see you. We hope to see you at all of our events and everything coming up. And we thank you all for your support with for attending the event now. It is 6:30 now, so I'm going to hand you off to Dan.
Good evening. Can y'all hear me out? All right. Hey, this is great. Look at this crowd. This is beautiful. This touches my heart. You know, I put a lot of effort into this. I want to thank Shayna for setting this up. I want to thank the Athenaeum for having us. And what a beautiful room on these beautiful grounds today. And it's not raining. Of course, we're inside. So yeah. So this is my effort to the Old Ball Ground Volume 3, Whip City Baseball in the Rock and Roll Era, and I named it the Rock and Roll Era. I think I was the first person to name that. Every era of baseball has a name to it, and rock music is is close to my heart. I can name pretty much anywhere. When I hear a song, I can pretty much name anywhere I was at the time. So that's what it's all about. And so let's get underway. Let me tell you. Oops, wrong way. Okay, let me tell you who I am. All right, I'm a native Westfielder. I was born in Noble Hospital, which doesn't happen anymore, right? And which is sad because you know, if you're about to have a child, you live in Westfield, you got to run to Springfield, and Springfield gets credit for the next Babe Ruth, right? So it's kind of sad. So I played Little League baseball, Babe Ruth baseball, American Legion baseball, all in Westfield. So I'm a product of Westfield baseball. I'm married to my wife Nancy, she's right here, and my two daughters right here. And I have a grandfather of 3 boys, and as you can see, I think we're handing it off to the right generation here, who are hopefully into baseball. But I'm hearing he likes golf, but you know, we'll get through that. I'm an inductee in the Western Mass Baseball Hall of Fame in 2020. I'm now also a voting member of the committee. A historian in Westfield. I've been given the 2010 Westfield Historical Commission Preservation Award. I was the second person to win this. I'm also a guest lecturer every year at the University of Massachusetts and Westfield State University. They all have baseball history courses. I just want to know, where was that course when I was going to school, right? We didn't have that, but so I'm given the chance to come in and explain the rules of baseball in the early days in the 19th century. And I'm also a member of the Society of American Baseball Research. I'm also a ballist. Okay, a ballist is a 19th century baseball player. I'm the captain of the Westfield Wheelman Vintage Baseball Club. I reformed the team that was around in the 1880s, so I brought him back. And so I'm the captain of the team, of the modern team. And then I play in 3 modern leagues today. So I need a couple extra days of the week. And in real life, I'm a product manager for a company called OMG Roofing Products. All right. Before we get underway, I want to alert you that there's a new beer in town, Great Awakening, that highlights the Westfield Wheelman, called Coolers Light. All right. So if you get the chance, if you're down at Great Awakening, you can buy these in cans, and it's got a great picture of the Westfield Wheelman on the can. And there's a quote from Babe Ruth here, which I think is pretty good. Sometimes when I reflect on all the beer I drink, I feel ashamed. Then I look into the glass and think about the workers at the brewery and all their hopes and dreams. If I don't drink this beer, they might be out of work and their dreams will be shattered. So that was from Babe himself. So if you get the chance, go buy some Wheelman beer. It's not heavy, it's light, which I told the master brewer who also plays on our team. You need a light beer. I can't drink all that heavy stuff. All right. And speaking of the Westfield Wheelman, if you're not doing anything this weekend, the Westfield Wheelman have the old-time New England baseball event at Hilltop Farm in Suffield, Connecticut. We have teams from all of New England as well as a team from Ohio coming into town. And it looks like the rain's going to hold off. So if you're not doing anything this weekend, it's Father's Day weekend, come enjoy an old-time ball game. All right, so the topics today, I'm going to talk about my research and how I did it. And I'm going to do a brief recap of volumes 1 and 2. And then we'll get into volume 3 subjects. So I figure this presentation will take about 30 minutes. And we'll get you out of here. All right, so my research, right? That's me with a martini there. This is what I do during the winter months, right? So, first of all, Gary Brown is a big inspiration to me. He was also a big help to me for the prior books as well as volume 3 before he passed away. He put out in the paper the call for, I was looking for information about front page cigar, fast pitch softball. He put it out there and I got a few hits right away, which was great. So I want to thank Gary Brown. I also, what's different about volume 3 is many of the players are still with us, or were with us at the time. And so it was great to actually put a face to the names. And just tonight, putting a face with the family members. So I want to thank the family members who also helped out on all this research. But like I said, it's nice to speak with someone that is actually live as opposed to looking at newspapers. However, genealogybank.com I did use a lot. It's the Springfield paper is what I looked primarily. The Westfield paper didn't have a whole lot, and plus they're not on genealogy.com. All right, so I used the Springfield paper quite a bit, and the Westfield paper was kind of hit and miss when it comes to microfilm research. All right, and it's certainly a lot easier to do microfilm research online when you can find a word, word search. It's a lot easier as opposed to the microfilm just going line by line by line by line. It's monotonous. So it was great that the technology, and I understand the Western News is trying to get online for this type of research. And of course, the Westfield Athenaeum. I do want to thank them again for tonight and hosting me and all the information they have. Okay, so the cover art, which is really great, all right? Designed by my niece, Amanda Rockwell. And I told Amanda, I'm looking for a design that looks like a 1960s psychedelic rock concert poster. Right? And if this was a lineup, you couldn't tell. She did a tremendous job, and of course, I picked my coach here, Jimmy Yakum, as the subject for, and Jimmy's here tonight. So she nailed it on the first try. Fantastic. So she's a graphic designer and did a tremendous job, and I love that. So, and those are other actual posters from back in the day. Okay, so let's do a volume 1 recap real quick. All right, so there's a lot of great information in the first book, which I have some tonight. I don't have volume 2. I have to get it republished. But volume 1, there was a game in the 1840s, 1850s called wicket ball. Wicket ball is not baseball. It's kind of like cricket, all right? It was played at Valley Forge. So there's a good chance General Shepard played wicket ball, all right? It was a game that was popular in the hill towns, and it was groundbreaking research. I'll call it groundbreaking research because when I was doing the research and looking up wicket ball, there was nothing. You look it up today, there's lots of information about wicket ball. So I have a feeling I brought this out. All right. The Atwaters was a pre-Civil War team, played in Westfield. Their picture was prominently displayed on the Ken Burns show about baseball. And there's actually a photo of the Atwaters in that film, so which is interesting. They were the first club in this area to play the New York game. The New York game is what you see today, 3 bases and a home plate. Most teams are in this area. We're playing the Massachusetts game, which was 4 bases and home plate. All right. So this was pre-Civil War. They went off when the Civil War happened. Baseball stopped. They went out and fought the Civil War. Some of the players turned into prisoners. Okay, and ask any historian, and they'll tell you the evolution of baseball happened in the prison camps in the North and the South, because you had players from the North, players from the South, all in prison. You had the guards all playing ball together and combining these rules. So any historian will tell you that the Civil War was a beacon for the game of baseball. All right. I also talk about the Westfield Firemen team. It was a town team. A lot of pros come into town, a lot of barnstorming teams. They played at Mosley's Park, which is on the corner of Meadow and East Main Street. If you see that, and we'll show it later, when you see the map of the horse track, they played in the middle of the horse track. Alan Hubbard was Westfield's first native born to play in the major leagues. He only played 2 games, right? And he played his first game under a false name. And there's 2 possible reasons why. Number one, back in the day, if you signed a contract, you were quickly released, but you were still under contract. So players would change their names, and it would appear in the box scores. You know, there was no MLB network, there was no ESPN, there was no computer, so you couldn't check the players. So Al West, he used the name Al West, kind of a tribute to Westfield. And then the following day, he used his real name, Alan Hubbard, in the box score, so it appeared. So the other reason is that there's a good chance that he was hiding from his parents. Because Al Hubbard was the captain and the catcher for Yale, right? And, you know, baseball players at the time are not the baseball players of today. They were pretty much hoodlums, you know, slugs, barroom brawlers, and they just, you know, your parents just didn't, they're spending all this money for you to go to Yale, and you're going to turn around and play baseball. So it didn't go over well. Mr. Adonis Terry, that's him on the right, Adonis, because he's extremely handsome. That's how he get the nickname Adonis. This is great, played 13 years in the major leagues, right? Pitched 2 no-hitters. And he was, his off-season training was unique, was different, right? He was a clean living player. He also umpired during his playing days. Oftentimes umpires wouldn't show up to games, so MLB at the time would anoint certain players to umpire games, all right? So, you know, and we know nothing about him in town, you know, so I feel pretty good that I brought him forward. If you look at the Athenaeum, the mural, there's a beautiful painting of Mr. Terry there. And sadly, he died at the age of 50 of pneumonia. So he didn't have a long afterlife, which is sad. Another town team in the late 1890s called the Westfields, which was pretty much a spin-off. They had the Westfield Firemen, they had the Westfield Wheelmen, they had just plain Westfields. And at the time, there was the Hampshire Hamden League, which they won the pennant in 1897. They won it over in Holyoke, and when they got back to town, there was a huge parade, fire, celebration party going down Main Street. So, and there's additional parties going down Main Street, which we'll talk about later, in later years. I also talk about the treatment of umpires. I guess nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. They were often blamed when the town team lost. They were always blamed for the loss, right? And when they were playing at Mosley's Park, there were stories of umpires trying to get through town at the end of the game, and everyone, you know, kids pelting with rocks and bottles. So it was not a pleasant thing. Hank Williams, I talk about. He was not born in Westfield, but he was an African American. Went to Westfield High School. This was about 1910, 1913, and he went on to play pre-Negro baseball for the Cuban and the Mohawk Giants, which is pretty amazing. All right, the Dusty League was the industrial league. Dusty was for short. It was the early 20th century. Every shop and factory had a team in the industrial league, and everything I'm telling you here happened throughout the rest of the country as well. So Westfield was right along with everybody else. You had the Westfield Athletics, another town team in the 1920s, featuring Joe Yackham, Ray Fitzgerald. Those are household names in this town when it comes to baseball. All right. Then you had the River Valley League, was a casualty of World War II, because right about 1941, that was their last season. And of course, the men went off to war and didn't come back until about the 1950s. So, and then we had a bunch of barnstormers come to town. You had professional teams, you had college teams, you had African American teams. Westfield's first night game was under a circus tent by this traveling Cherokee Indian baseball team. They had lights set up and it was in a circus tent. So you had all kinds of crazy barnstormers. So that was kind of cool. All right, well, let's look at the hallowed grounds in the mid-19th century, early 20th century. This is Mosley's Park right here on this on the racetrack here, right? You had the North Elm Street grounds, you had Whitney Playground, Warnoco Park way out here, and of course, this is the old ball ground. This is where it began. Where General Shepherd is today is the old ball ground where they would play early baseball or wicket ball. Now, here's our hallowed grounds of the 20th century. All right, Whitney Field was when it developed in about 1914. You had Municipal Field, which today is called Bowens Field, and level 2 is Yockham Field. Okay, of course, when the trade school didn't come in until about the early 1960s. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any old maps that showed the original municipal field. And then, of course, you had the 20th century, you had Cross Street Playground. All right. Now, the next slide I want to show you, if you're weak of stomach, please don't look at this. All right, this is Westfield South Middle School, and this disgusts me. All right, the beautiful ball diamond is gone. It's grown over. The benches are torn off. You can barely see the baseline. There's home plate, pitchers. There aren't a lot of 90-foot diamonds in this town, and it's so sad that this has gone to waste. All right, so if I run for mayor, this will be my stand here. But anyways, I'm serious. It really is. There's not a lot of diamonds in this town. You can't get time on a ball field. Okay, so let's get into volume 3. Okay, volume 3. I'm going to focus on these highlighted teams here. But we talked about our Westfield's first tri-county team, the Westfield Eagles, the American Legion Post 124, how they evolved. 1946, when the war was over, the boys are back in town. Bullen's Disciples, George Duffy Clark. Front Page Cigar is really where this research started. Okay. Men's fast pitch softball. It is the missing link after World War II. All right, we'll get into that. Westfield Little League, Westfield Babe Ruth League. 1967, the year of the Bombers, which we'll get into that. Westfield Whips, which was a great story, and we'll get into that briefly. And then shaggy hair, stirrup socks, white spikes, and flannel uniforms. A story of the 1975 13-year-old New England Regional Champions, and I'll take credit for that one. All right, so chapters 1 through 4. Again, I'm going to touch upon this briefly. Was Westfield's first tri-county team, 1934, 1935. All the same names. Joe Yockham, Ray Fitzgerald, Heine Miller. You had the Samanzik brothers, and in the first 2 years, they won the championship in each of the first 2 years. Okay, and again, it's Yockham and Fitzgerald, unbelievable ball players. You had the American Legion Post 124. You had Billy Bowens and Joe Yockham were coaches of the first year. All right, that's why you see these Bowens Field and Yockham Field. That's why they're up there. 1946, the boys are back in town. The River Valley League couldn't form. They couldn't reform. The soldiers are back from war. They didn't have time to play ball, right? All they wanted to do was build houses. They had the GI Bill or go back to school. I know my father built his house literally with his own hands. My father-in-law built his house with his own hands. I'm sure a lot of parents built their house with their own hands. They didn't have time for playing baseball. Two teams did come back, Foster Machine and Club 25, and they had some great games together, playing each other. They would also play independent teams throughout the region, but they would have the championship of Westfield, which is covered in the book. I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's a great story. And then Billy Bullen's disciples, all right? Billy Bullen's was the head coach of St. Mary's, and Joe Yakin was the head coach of Trade, and they had some battles. And they knew each other, right? And they had some championship games that were back and forth, so that's a great story. Okay, chapters 5, 9 through 11, and 13. George Duffy Clark was an icon in this town. I'm not sure how many people, I forgot who I spoke to, but he was an icon in this town. He was a great ball player, and he was also a writer for the Springfield paper, and he was into politics a little bit, and just an icon of this town, which you'll read about. Westfield Little League. I talk about the development of the Westfield Little League in 1950, which is really when Little League began. I talk about the development of Cross Street, and I also talk about how girls entered the scene in the mid-1970s. And this is Donna McLean right here. And Donna was not necessarily the first girl, but she was the first dominating girl of the game. And you know, the mid-1970s was a crazy time, and with women's rights, and it's a great story, you know. So you'll enjoy that one. And then the Westfield Whips, Daily News Sandlot champions of 1972. It wasn't Babe Ruth and it wasn't Legion. They were the 14 to 16-year-olds, right? And they went on. And the first two games, they got crushed in the regular season. Their coach quit, right? But the writer for the Westfield paper said this was the team that never quit. And they went on to win the Sandlot Daily News tournament. So that's a great story. And that's the team right there. You have Jim Trask, the tallest guy there, went on to play in the minor leagues for the Red Sox. Okay, so talk about barnstormers, okay? 20th century was not without their great barnstormers. And I think one of the greatest ones is the California Cuties, all right? You've all heard of the Savannah Bananas, right? And maybe you've seen some of the highlights of the players dancing and the umpires dancing, and you know. But this is great, and this was a softball touring team, and these are guys dressed as ladies, okay? They had great names: Hefty Helen, Dumpy Dora, Skinny Minnie, Fifi the Flirt, Skaggy Maggie, Dinosaur, which I thought was great. Main Street Sally and Cutie Baloo. They had their little person there on the team, and of course he was the star of the show. But what a great thing, you know. And this was entertainment, you know. This is what you did on a summer evening in the 1950s, right? You went down, you watched the California Cuties play the front page cigar. But that wasn't the only barnstormers, right? This is stuff you're never going to see again. You're never going to see donkey ball. Right? Just think what would happen if you put on a donkey ball. There'd be protesters like crazy. But that was they played both softball and baseball. They came to town. It was fundraisers, is what they did. You had, I think it was the pitcher and the catcher and the batter didn't have to be on a donkey, but if you hit the ball, you had to get on the donkey and try to run. But if you did, of course, donkeys aren't. They're not gonna do anything. So that was amusing. But again, it's something you'll never see again. All right. Then you had Al Schatt, the Crown Prince of Baseball, was just a clown and would come to town at some of these fundraising games, and you know. What a great story there. So, let's get into the meat of the presentation. And this is Front Page Cigar. This is what started my research. And Gary Brown said, hitting all fields in 2016, honk if you miss Front Page Cigar, softball. Okay? front page, or men's fast pitch softball was huge, okay? This is the missing link in between Korea War and, the 1950s and 60s. Why is that? Well, you played on a smaller diamond, all right, so there was less real estate. The games were fairly quick, hour and a half, right? And this is what players did. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to tell you why they're significant in Westfield baseball history. All right, I'm going to tell you who they were and how they did it. And this is actually a real logo that was on a jacket that I was able to pull off, and you get a nice picture of it. Peter Pasco in the middle. Where's his family? Yeah. Yeah, Pistol Pete Pasco. Okay, so this is where they played. You're in center field. You're at Yakum Field. That's Hubbard Street up there, and this is where they played. I just want to read something here from a Dan Moriarty. He was a young fan at the time, and he told me in my research, under the lights with such close proximity, it felt like Fenway Park. At game time, there was already electricity in the air. The field was manicured and inviting. And when front page took the field, everyone was cheering. After 2 or 3 innings, you realized that these guys were good. So, that was from a young fan. And so one of my goals, and I can never find it, was a picture of this ball field as it was, because there was lights. You had lights on the field, right? You had a grandstand back here, an announcer's box. This would be home plate right about here. And what was beautiful about it, you had built-in grandstands where people would line. Can you imagine this in the 1950s? People lined up. You had all the cool cars, right? You got Elvis on the radio. This is what these guys did, and I just can't find a picture of recreational field at the time. All right, now, whenever you do research, right, at some point you got to cut it off. Enough is enough research, right? And these pictures literally just came to me within the past day or so. And these are great shots. This is courtesy of Johnny Babinski and the Ben Canan families, and I think there's some family members here tonight. All right, yeah, these are such beautiful shots, right? But I couldn't find them back, when I was doing my research. But I'm not sure where this is. That picture, I don't think that's municipal. It could be. But look at it's. They played night games, and that's what you did. You went down and watched these games. And, this isn't your beer league softball, all right? Beer league softball players aren't sliding. They're not doing that, all right? These are the best players at the time. Here's some more pictures here, and just some great shots. And, I can't imagine the lights must be terrible because all you see is what's right here. But such a great story, the front page cigar. All right, so why are they significant in Westfield baseball history? Well, they are a product of World War II and Korean War, because a lot of these players played softball overseas, and they played fast pitch softball. You didn't need the real estate, you could get it done quick, and this is where the best players of the era played. They didn't play baseball because there really wasn't a lot of great baseball teams. All right, this was quick, it was fast, all right? It was literally a faster game. That's George Keller sliding in the home plate. All right, so who were these guys? All right, they existed from 1956 to 1967. They were war heroes. These guys went off to war, whether it be World War II or Korea War, and they came back. A lot of them played overseas. They were in their late 20s. They were in their early 30s. Most of them were married with young families. They were blue-collar, church-going union men, all right? And oftentimes they were 3 sport athletes. They all took advantage of the GI Bill. All right, and this is who these guys were. This was Westfield at the time.
Are the coaches' names we know?
Ben Kania, Kania. All right. Well, you know, you'll have to read it. Read the book. They weren't household names like Joe Yakum or Ray Fitzgerald. They came from different parts. There were some Westfield guys here. So how did they do it? You know, they were Class A title champions, Massachusetts champions, right? And they were perennial winners every year. And how did they do it? By great pitching, all right? This team was considered semi-pro. And a semi-pro team means some of the players were actually paid. All right, and the best players, mostly pitching, were paid. Okay, well, what do you mean they were paid? Well, Pete Pashko was paid $10 a game per person. That was 1950-ish. $10 today is like $100. And there's a story in here about he was holding out. He wanted $30 a week. That's $300, right? Can you imagine $300 in 1950 for playing softball? But he was Pete was a blazing pitcher. You had to have great pitching. You had, just like today, you have to have great pitching, right? So you had players like Hal James who was paid. Pete Pashko was paid. Pete actually beat the king in his court. He played on an all-star team in West Springfield. And he was one of very few players to ever beat the king in his court. All right, so he's a legend. They also did it with clutch hitting. All right, you have to have clutch hitting and great pitching. And from my count, I counted between about 96 players between players and coaches during that time period. So what happened? All right, this guy happened. All right. Fast pitch softball, the game evolved when it first started in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. It's kind of what you see today now with women's fast pitch softball. You got the windmill, and back in the day they weren't developing, but now over time, over the 50s and 60s, these pitchers they were throwing gas, and the games were getting boring. It's like 1-0. They'd throw no hitters like they were nothing, right? So these guys here, they just want to hit bombs, right? So the pitchers evolved, they got faster, they got better, right? Game was getting boring. The slow pitch game grew in the 1960s and 70s. There was more offense. Guys just wanted to hit bombs. It was also called the not so good league, right? Or the beer league softball as we know today. But so that's what happened, and it's not around anymore. You don't see men's fast pitch softball. Some parts of the world it's still pretty big, but it's just not big anymore. All right. So I have to tell you about this story here. Bill Plisko. When I sent my request to Gary Brown to send out a request for information or photos and so on, I was getting a few photos here and there. But one day, I got in the mail a letter from Bill Plisko. Bill Plisko was the manager of Front Page Cigar, and he sent me a total of 12 pages. And written in printed. And I don't even know if this is a thing, but half spaced. He put 2 lines within 1 line. So it took me weeks and weeks to decipher what he was saying. And it's just a tremendous story, and he let some players have it. He was talking about Pete Pashko and your mom, and it was pretty impressive, So how that Pete's wife demanded he get more money because he was out 6 nights a week playing softball. Sounds familiar. So she demanded more money, and so he wanted more money. Things like that, kind of nitpicky things, right? And they talked about going down to the Legion after a game and having a good time. So again, nothing much has changed. But and so he said that he was what, 92 at the time, lived in Hoyle, and I swear to God, this was the hardest thing I've ever done to decipher what he said. And unfortunately, he never saw the publication of the book because he died about a year ago. So that's the thing. You got to get this stuff done now. So that's the political letters. All right, here we go. So Gary Brown again, a new quote from the Morning Line in August of 1965. Westfield High should profit from their talents. Okay, the 1965 was the Babe Ruth All-Star team that won the state championship. And there were a number of players on that team. But again, Gary Brown, look at that. Talking about it, the 1967 team in 1965. All right? So, we're going to tell you why they're significant in Westfield baseball history. We're going to tell you who they were and how they did it. 1967, the year of the Bombers. So, they were Westfield's first high school state championship team. That alone is worthy. All right? Captured the hearts of Westfield in June, and later on that summer, of course, the Red Sox also captured the hearts of New England. The championship game was broadcasted at WDEW. It's hard to believe. And is there a recording of that somewhere? That'd be fantastic. So, what do you think, Coach?
No, but I believe Joe Castiglione was one of the broadcasters.
Was he really?
Wow.
I think he started with it.
Okay, interesting. Well, we got to find that. All right. Defeated Medford on the Cape, and you know Westfield was up against a very strong pitching staff, and their pitcher also went on to play minor league baseball, so they had a great pitcher. And this was crazy to read about the midnight parade down Elm Street. So at the end of the game, they went back to their hotel. They had dinner. The team. They got on the bus. They were heading down the turnpike, and they were met by the state police. And they had an escort into town. There was fire trucks at the exit at the turnpike. There was several cars honking their horns, going down through town. This is at midnight, just raising hell, going through town. So, what a great story that is as well. All right, so who were these guys, right? So, 8 returnees from 1966 high school team, 11 from the 1965 Babe Ruth All-Star State Champions. 3 were selected in the 1968 MLB Draft. They were inducted to the Western Mass Baseball Hall of Fame in 2022. You also had my future brother-in-law, 3 of my future coaches, and my future first lawyer were on this team. So I got to know them pretty well. What a great team. Okay, how they did it. Strong leader, Angelo Ferroni. This is Angelo Ferroni right here. Angelo was an ex-Marine. He was also an ex-minor league ball player. And from what I was told by the players, he was a disciplinary. And that's where I know where you got it. All right. You got to have a strong leader. And Coach Ferroni was that for sure. Great pitching. Of course, Jakob, Garcia, Witherall, Bavino. And you've got to have that many pitchers, quality pitchers, during a season. Otherwise, one pitcher ain't going to do it. All right? Small ball. Fundamentals. He stressed fundamentals. Small ball, whether it's the offense making small ball or you're forcing the other team to play small ball and throw the ball away and score runs by bad defense. But they stress small ball. That's not something we don't see much anymore. And experience. They're playing history together as a team. So that's the Westfield 1967 year of the Bombers. All right. Look at this motley crew. Where is it? There's that guy. All right. So, again, Gary Brown. Westfield's all agog over his Babe Ruth All-Stars who earned the berth in the World Series starting today. Gary Brown hitting the all fields August 29th, 1975. Hey, that's the 50th anniversary this year. How cool is that? All right. I titled this "Shaggy Hair, Stirrup Socks, right? Flannel uniforms, and white spikes." You know, that was the thing, white spikes back in the day. That's when it first started. It all came out from the Oakland A's at the time, but that was pretty great. So I'm going to tell you who we were, why we were significant in Westfield baseball history, and how we did it. All right. So why we were significant in Westfield baseball history? We led the way for all future Babe Ruth 13-year-old stars nationwide. Okay, nationwide. And so what does that mean, really? Well, when we won the Western Mass tournament, we were going to be going off into eastern part of the state, and we were going to be staying with host families. It's like, really? Host families? So, but that was a big deal, all right? We were guinea pigs, all right? They told us it was the World Series tournament, but it was not. It was really an experiment. What they wanted to do is they wanted to see how 13-year-olds could handle being away from home, okay, on our own, all right, to see if they're going to do it again the next year and the next year. So we were guinea pigs to see how well we would behave, all right? So that was a bit of a shocker. So, listen, it was the summer of 1975. We were 13 years old. We were away from home. And we had teenage coaches. So, what could go wrong? All right? And we behaved, sort of. But we did. You know, I remember going to, in the New England tournament, down to Paragon Park, which was an amusement park at the time, and where all the teams, it was at night, and again, you know, there was no parental supervision. It was just crazy stuff. But we behaved, all right? We were good. So who were we? Well, we were tough kids. We were playground, neighborhood hardened kids. We all played together in various neighborhoods. You know, tough kids. We were friends. We were classmates. We were teammates. We all played in the Babe Ruth League, either against each other or on the same team. We had teenage coaches. All right. We were cocky. Right. We were the rock stars of Westfield, but no one knew it because Westfield News was on strike that year. So, you know, there was no internet, of course. So, and once we got through the Western Mass tournament, the head of Westfield Babe Ruth said, "We're going to get rid of these teenage coaches and give them like real coaches, right?" And when we heard it, and when our parents heard it, they put up a stink with Westfield Babe Ruth and said, "Are you crazy? These kids love these young coaches." So they put up a stink, and they were reinstituted as the coaches. Mike Stefanik and Keith Enko. Let's see here. So this is Mickey right here. There's Mickey and Keith right there. Teenagers, probably 18, 17. So how did we do it? Great coaching. These guys were sharp. We had focus practices. We had camaraderie. We beat Longmeadow. We beat Leominster. We beat Norton Worcester. We beat Oxford. We beat Stamford, Connecticut. Essex Junction, Vermont. And when in the final game against Greater Lawrence, and Greater Lawrence is from Massachusetts, we won the state championship and the New England regional championship all in one game. And we won on a walk-off balk. Can you imagine being the umpire making that call? Walk-off balk. So, it's such a great story, you know, holding the trophy, seeing some of these faces. You know, this is Pat O'Connor right here, who's no longer with us. John Rodriguez, who's no longer with us. Billy Gamache, I can never find Billy. I don't know where he ended up. I don't know if he's still alive. You know, Todd Marcioniak on the far right hand side. Andy Varellis, of course, that's a handsome dude there. So, 50th anniversary this year. All right. So, when we went to New Jersey for the World Series, this is us getting ready to board the bus to New Jersey. And we did have one adult coach, Phil Rubin Sr. He was pretty much like the father figure on the team, and he was great. He really helped out our young coaches. So why do we have Bruce Springsteen here, right? Well, we were playing in New Jersey, Hamilton Township. We were playing Morristown, New Jersey as the team. It was Labor Day weekend in 1975, and that's when Born to Run first hit the airwaves. All right, so we didn't have a chance. I remember my foster brother at the time, who reminds me of the kid from Dazed and Confused. He said to me, "Hey man, do you know who Bruce Springsteen is?" I said, "No. I was listening to, Casey and the Sunshine Man." That hit the airwaves that weekend, and we didn't have a chance. So we met our match, and that's where it ended, right there, the World Series. So, you look at the history books of Babe Ruth baseball, they don't even mention 1975 through 1980. So we were the trailblazers for Westfield Babe Ruth and all of Babe Ruth. And that's it. Crazy stuff. Any questions? Yes, sir.
One question.
Yes, sir.
How do you play donkey ball? It's just like baseball with. It's just baseball with
Riding a donkey.
donkeys.
It is crazy. It was mostly for a lot of laughs. And can you imagine getting on a donkey and trying to get him to run down to first base?
Didn't we have a fundraiser in high school with donkey basketball?
Donkey basketball, yeah. Again, you just wouldn't see that today. Peter would be coming after you. So.
Any other questions? Okay, if anyone needs the bathroom, you can head through this exit. There's 2 bathrooms there, and there's also upstairs 2 bathrooms, but you'll need the key at the circulation desk if you head upstairs. Thank you all for attending, and if you haven't already, come get your copy signed here today from Dan for his books. They're $20.
Correct.
They're $20 a piece, so if you're able to, he also takes pen.
All right.
So thank you all for attending.